Hello everyone, welcome back. This is Ahmed for Eduonix, and this is Beginning DevOps section 2, where we are introducing Vagrant as one of the DevOps tools for instant provisioning. In the previous lectures, we have seen how to install Vagrant, how to use it to create virtual machines in a matter of seconds, how those virtual machines have already file sharing enabled, and how to access network services that may be running on the Vagrant machines through the host. In this lecture, let's see how we can handle the shutdown of the Vagrant machine, how we can stop it, restart it, suspend it, and halt it. So let's get back to the terminal, let's clear the screen, and once you need to shut down the machine for whatever reason, you have the following options. Either use Vagrant suspend like this, and with suspend, the state of the machine is reserved, RAM is saved to disk. When you resume the machine, all the services will continue to run automatically. This can be done by using Vagrant suspend command. Let's issue that command, Vagrant suspend, and Vagrant suspend is going just to, as the name suggests, suspend the machine. If I go back to the Ubuntu page where we have stopped at last lecture and I try to refresh the page, as I can see, unable to connect, that is because the machine is suspended. If I type Vagrant resume, it's going just to resume work as if it hasn't stopped. It's going to resume the machine with any services that were already started. We do not need to start them again. They are just going to resume work, as we're going to see in a moment. Okay, and now the machine has been resumed. If I go back to the Firefox and refresh the page, as I can see, I have Ubuntu Apache default installation page. So that is Vagrant suspend. Use it if you want just to pause the machine for a few moments for any reason, and then you want to resume it again. But perhaps you want to use the port that this machine was using to run another machine to test something, and then you got rid of that machine and you want to resume the first machine's work. So just use, at that case, you can use the Vagrant suspend in order not to waste time. The second command that you can use is called Vagrant halt, and Vagrant halt is just like the shutdown command when you use it with Windows or Linux or any other operating system. Just halt just means that you are going to gracefully shut down the machine. However, sometimes the machine may not respond to the graceful shutdown. It may need to just force shutdown, force killing all of the processes that may be still running. In that case, Vagrant automatically uses Vagrant halt -- force. Vagrant halt -- force means that I want to force shutting down the machine. Of course, it is needless to say, do not use this unless it is absolutely necessary, because forcing shutdown of the machine may cause undesirable effects, like, for example, file systems may have errors. Services, when they shut down uncleanly, they may fail to start and they may cause problems. So use -- force only if you're absolutely confident that you need to forcefully shut down the machine. In all other cases, just use Vagrant halt, which will attempt a graceful shutdown of the virtual machine. Once the machine is gracefully shut down, when you want to start it again, you will have to start manually each and every service that has been running before it was shut down, unless, of course, you have enabled those services to start at boot time. So in our case, we did not instruct Apache to start at boot time. This means that once this machine is shut down and restarted again, you won't be able to access the Ubuntu default page unless you manually start the Apache web server. And it seems that the graceful shutdown of this machine is not working, so in a matter of moments, you're going to see that Vagrant is going to use automatically the forceful shutdown mode of the machine. As you can see here, forcing shutdown of the VM, it forcefully shut down the machine. In order to get the machine up and running, just issue Vagrant up. Vagrant up is going to start the machine and get it back to the way it was. However, again, if you do not have the services that has been running before the shutdown automatically starting with the boot time, you will have to manually start them. Okay, so the machine now is started. If I go back to the Firefox page and I press refresh, okay, seems that Apache has been already configured to start automatically when the system boots. So let's just run systemcdl sudo systemcdl, maybe that status Apache 2. Okay, and yes, it has been configured to start automatically when the system boots, and maybe that's, and perhaps that is just part of the installation. Now, the last option that you can use with Vagrant when it comes to shutting down the machine or finishing its work is Vagrant Destroy. And Vagrant Destroy, as the name suggests, is going to destroy the machine. Destroying the machine means that it is going to be reset to the way it was when it was first deployed from the box. This means that anything that you got installed, anything that you have added, like a user, a service, an application, even if a file got changed, even if a timestamp of a directory got changed, everything is going to be destroyed. Everything will be brought back to the way it was when the machine was first deployed. So use that option only when you want to reset the machine to the way or to the state that it was in when you first installed it. Needless to say that any changes that have been made to the machine is going to be lost, except any files that have been placed in the /vagrant shared directory. Anything that has been placed in the shared directory will not be affected by Vagrant Destroy. So let's type Vagrant Destroy. Let's destroy the machine that we have just created. Of course, Vagrant is asking you for a confirmation message because this is one of the critical commands that can be used with Vagrant. I'm going to press yes to destroy the machine. And as you can see here, in a matter of seconds, it has destroyed the machine. If I want to get the machine back to the way it was, or just to reinstall it again as if I am installing it for the first time, I just gonna run Vagrant up. So Vagrant Destroy will just undo anything that Vagrant up has did, together with anything that you have did as a user after the machine has been up and running. So I am issuing Vagrant up, and the machine is being deployed as if it is being deployed for the first time. Okay, now the machine is up and running again. Let's run Vagrant SSH to get inside. Of course, if I go to Firefox and try to refresh the page, it's no longer accepting connections, simply because I no longer have Apache installed. So if I run sudo system cl status Apache, you're gonna find that Apache to the service is not available. That is because Apache is not installed in the first place, and that is because we issued Vagrant Destroy, which effectively deleted any installation that has been made to the machine, and that of course includes Apache. So in this lecture we have learned how we can deal with the Vagrant machine in terms of shutting it down. We can suspend it, halt it, or even destroy it, and each of these commands has its own scenario and has its own uses. That brings us to the end of this lecture. In the coming lecture, we are going to see how Vagrant is actually used for instant provisioning, how it can automate post-installation procedures using a variety of tools. So until then, see you next. Hello everyone, welcome back. This is Ahmad for Eduonix, and this is Beginning DevOps, Section 2, introducing Vagrant as a way of instant provisioning. Vagrant machines comes in two flavors. Either a clean OS install like the one we have just installed, or with a pre-built environment where applications and services have been deployed to the machine before being packaged as a box. And that is the example that we have seen when we visited the vagrantcloud.com/search. Let's have a second look at that website. Okay, and as you can see here, I have, for example, Laravel/Homestat. This machine, or this Vagrant machine, has a Laravel PHP framework pre-installed with the machine. This means that whenever I install that on my system, I will instantly have access to Laravel framework, the PHP, the MySQL database, and all the modules and all the files and services that are needed for Laravel to run. I do not have to install Laravel. I don't have to download anything. I will just start working. So this is one flavor of Vagrant, and the other flavor is just to have a clean OS installed. However, Vagrant gives you the opportunity or the chance to provision the machine after it has been created. So in here, when I started the machine, as you can see, I can have a provisioning script run on the machine, and that provisioning script will install or configure or do whatever I need to configure the machine once it has been created. And this can be actually configured, or it can be supplied in the Vagrant file. At the last stanza of the file, at the last few lines in the file, as you can see here, read this: enable provisioning with a shell script. Additional provisioners such as Puppet, Chef, Ansible, Salt, and Docker are also available. Please see the documentation for more information. This means that I can use a shell script either in line, like this. I can just write a shell script. I can write shell commands inside the script, inside the Vagrant file like this, or I can just point to a shell script that is available in the directory, and that script is going to be executed once the machine is up and running for the first time to be provisioned. Or I can use one of the very famous configuration management tools like Chef, Puppet, Ansible, Salt, or a containerization software like Docker. So as you can see here, Vagrant is very flexible when it comes to configuration management or when it comes to instant provisioning. So in order to provision an environment, we have two options: either to install a clean operating system like we did and use one of those tools, or even a shell script to provision the environment, like for example, download PHP, download Apache, download MySQL, or you can use a pre-built version of the Vagrant machine, like we have seen on the Vagrant Up website here. Like for example, Laravel, we can download a machine that contains Laravel pre-installed, and we don't have and we don't need to run any of those configuration management tools or the shell script. But you might ask, if there is already a machine for every well-known environment, or if there is already a machine pre-installed or pre-built with the target environment, why do you need to run a provision script? Why do you need to run a configuration management? Well, actually, because if I have this machine, it's going to be configured the way the creator of the machine configured it. So for example, it's going to create a MySQL database on the same machine as Laravel. Maybe that's not what I'm intending. Maybe I want to have a machine containing MySQL and another one containing the application server. And it may have installed a lot of files, a lot of directories, a lot of services, a lot of features for Laravel that I do not need. The creator of that machine may have created all those libraries or those files so that this machine is generic enough for anybody to start working with it out of the box without needing to customize lots of things. So for some reason or another, I may not be needing all those features. I just need to install what I need to start a project or to start an environment. So that's why in most cases you will find yourself resorting to either a shell script, a simple shell script, or one of those configuration management tools. So in this lab, we are going to use a shell script to provision a web server automatically once the machine is started. So in order to do that, I have created that file, deploylamp.sh. Just have a look at those commands. Nothing fancy here. If you have worked with Linux before, this is just very easy. I'm gonna explain it quickly. Those two lines are just needed for Ubuntu to start installation. It's just adding the necessary locale environment variables to the bash profile, and it's doing apt-get update. We have just did that when we needed to install Apache, and this line is going to install the prerequisites for the LAMP stack. We are going to configure this machine to run the LAMP stack. So apt-get install Apache 2, which is the web server, PHP, PHP-MB string, PHP-zip, PHP unit unzip, lib apache 2-mod.php, which is the module that is used by Apache to work with PHP. Those are just the prerequisites, and we are using apt-get install to install them. You can just use sudo before each and every command of those, because we are not going to install them using the Vagrant user, so we'll need to use sudo. And those two commands are used to set the root password for the MySQL server. This is needed before you start installing MySQL-server. And if you have worked with the interactive installation of MySQL server on Ubuntu, you're gonna see that at the end of the installation, you will have an interactive screen that is asking you to enter the root password and to enter that root password again. And because this is an automated installation where no user interaction will be available, or new user will be available to enter those passwords, I'm going to use this command in order to ensure that the password is entered when MySQL server needs it. I have set the root password to be admin and admin. To add it again, admin. Then I'm gonna install MySQL server, sudo service MySQL start or systemcdl start MySQL, whatever you favor more. Both commands are basically the same. Then it's gonna start a MySQL server, and it's gonna create a database for me using this MySQL command. Actually, that's not needed. Let's just delete that file. It's not needed. Let's just delete that line. It's not needed. just want to create the database and that's it. And let's also sudo service apache to start. Okay, just take all this. Okay, and I'm gonna exit, and I'm gonna create a shell script that is called deploy lamp, or deploy lamp.sh. I'm gonna just paste all those lines of text inside so that the script is ready. And then what I need to do is to go to the Vagrant file, go to the end, and then inform Vagrant that I need this script to be run. So config the vm.provision shell, but I don't want this to be in line, so I'm gonna delete that, and that, and I'm gonna just enter path colon deploy lamp, which is the name of the script, and by default it is present in the current path, so I'm just gonna write the name of the script, and I am going to write privileged. I can set that to false or true, and it's a good idea to set that to false and use the root privileges only when needed using the sudo command. I think this is a security best practice to set the privileged option to false or to no, and to give the user admin privileges only when it is needed using the sudo command. Now let's save the file, and I'm going to issue vagrant -- reload in order to reread the file. Okay, and we have a syntax error. Let's correct it quickly. We have an extra space here. Let's issue vagrant reload, and again it's going to attempt a graceful shutdown of the VM. Okay, and sometimes we find that the machine is not provisioning or not following the script that you have created, or not executing the script that you have instructed it to execute in the Vagrant file, and that is because the Vagrant machine runs the provisioning only when it is first created. Afterwards, you will have to run Vagrant provision, just like this. So let's run Vagrant provision, press enter. Okay, and as you can see here, it's starting to doing apt-get upgrade or apt-get update to update the software resources, and now it is actually installing Apache and PHP. Okay, and seems that I have a typo here. It's apt-get install. I was missing the S. Okay, so just run provision again. Okay, and it's installing MySQL now. Okay, and the provisioning is done, hopefully. Let's run vagrant SSH to get inside the machine. Okay, and sudo systemctl status Apache 2. Okay, it's running. If we go to again localhost 8080, I'm gonna find that we have the Apache installation page available, which means that Apache is installed. And if we want to have a look at MySQL, just try it MySQL -u root, which is the user-p admin. And actually this is not the best, of course, this is not the best way security-wise to enter a password for MySQL installation, because you're just entering it on the command line visible to anybody who is viewing your lines. But this is just for the sake of demonstration. If I press enter, okay, I am inside MySQL. This means that MySQL has been successfully installed. Let's ensure now that we have PHP as well installed. Okay, I need to be root to start editing any file in this location, so I'm gonna use sudo vi then test. Just create a file that is called test.php, and inside it I'm going to write that PHP code. This is just going to echo the output of a famous PHP function that's called PHP info. And what it does is that it prints information about the PHP installation on the screen. So if you have a successful PHP installation and the necessary modules have been installed in Apache to recognize PHP as a language, then you go to the browser and just navigate to test.php, and if everything is working fine, as you can see here, you should have a screen that is similar to this one. It contains the PHP information, all the settings or the variables or the environments, all the packages actually, or all the libraries and modules that have been installed with PHP get printed here. So this means that we have successfully installed Apache, PHP, and MySQL. Congratulations, you have a successful LAMP stack provisioned to you instantly by Vagrant using a shell script. You didn't have to enter one line of code, you just type Vagrant SSH, and once you are inside, you already have a working LAMP stack ready for you to start development. I hope you have enjoyed this lecture. In the coming lecture, it will be the last lecture of this section. We are going to see how we can use Vagrant to run multiple machines at the same time. So until then, see you next. Hello everyone, welcome back. This is Ahmad for Eduonix, and this is Beginning DevOps, section 2, titled Vagrant as a tool for instant provisioning. And I guess by now you have already seen how Vagrant is very powerful in instant provisioning. It can provide a complete infrastructure for you to start working with the least human intervention possible and with the most automation level that is attainable. In the previous lectures, we have seen how we can install and manage a Vagrant machine, how we can access the network services that are running, how we can access shared files between the host machine and the guest machine, and finally how we can use a shell script, or of course you can use other configuration management, specialized configuration management tools like Puppet Chef, Ansible, Salt, and others to even execute post-installation steps that will provision or that will complete the provisioning of your required environment. In this last lecture of the section, we are going to see how Vagrant can also be used to provision several machines at the same time at the same location. So let's first ask, why would you want to do that? Why would you want to provision multiple machines with the same or inside the same directory? After all, and as we have mentioned before, you can create a separate directory for each Vagrant machine, and you can create as many machines as you require as long as your hardware supports. So why would you want to create multiple machines on the same directory? Well, let's consider the example that we have just finished the last lecture with, which was a LAMP stack. A LAMP stack, as you already know by now, is a combination of Linux, Apache, PHP, MySQL on the same machine. But in real-world scenarios and in real-world applications, that is not the case. The Apache web server is typically installed on a server, with PHP of course installed on top of it, and the database server is installed usually on a separate server. This will ensure that load is balanced, or that load is distributed among the database and the web server. If you have just one server that is handling all the requests to the database and to the web server, it might not be efficient enough in a real world scenario or in a real world environment. So in most cases, or almost in all cases, the database is always in another server. So you may want to create an environment that is portable enough to be taken from one machine to another. And for that to work successfully, you will have to have this environment just in one Vagrant file, just in one directory for Vagrant to manage. That way, it will be easier for you to manage the machines that belong to the same environment. So for example, I can have a directory that contains a web server and a database, both in the same directory, but they are working or they are being provisioned on two separate machines. And that is fortunately provided by Vagrant. And let's see how. So let's go to our terminal again, and let's go to let's exit actually the machine, and we are now inside Ubuntu. Let's cd /, and let's create a directory that is called LAMP. This directory is going to hold the machines that we are going to use for our LAMP installation. And actually we're gonna do just the same thing we did in the last lecture, but the important difference here is that we are going to distribute the work so that the web server is going to hold Apache and PHP, while the database server is going to hold the MySQL server. So the first thing we're going to do is that we are going to copy the Vagrant file from the Ubuntu machine to here so that we have a Vagrant file. And now all what we need to do is just configure that file or change that file to accommodate more than one machine. So in order to do that, and just right before the end stanza here, let's write the following: config.vm.define. You are now defining a machine. I'm gonna call it app for the app server. Do. Okay, this is Ruby code, and you don't have to be proficient in Ruby to understand it or to write it. It's just a couple of lines, or just 3 lines of code that are going to create a machine for you. So just by now you have a machine that is called app. You can access the properties of this machine the same way you accessed the properties of the machine in the rest of the Vagrant file. So I can write, for example, app.vm.provision, and now, as you can see here, I'm provisioning using a shell command, using a shell script path. As you can see, I'm just copying what I've just written, and let's say that I will have a file that is called deploy-web.sh. This is the file that is going to be used to deploy the web server, and privilege it. As usual, we're gonna set that to false. Okay, and end. As you can see, it is very easy to understand. You're just creating a machine that is called app, and you're gonna use this app object to configure its different options. So you will have to either comment out this line because it's no longer needed, otherwise it's going to provision the machine twice. And actually, as a matter of fact, everything that has been created in this Vagrant file is going to be applied to all the machines that are here, unless you override them. So for example, the forwarded port that is 80, and that is forwarded from the host machine from 8080 to 80, is going to be applied to this machine and to the other machine that we are going to create right now. Okay, just the lines that you create here, or just the lines that you add here, are the ones that are going to override anything in the Vagrant file. If you do not create a line here, it's just going to create a machine for you that is called app with all the settings that have been defined here. If you want to have specialized settings, you would have to enter them here in this part of the script, in this part of the file. Okay, so now I will have to create another machine that is called database, or DB, for an alias, and I am going to refer to it further as DB. So db.vm.provision is going to be also a shell script, and it is going to refer to a file that is called deploy-db.sh, and again, privilege is false. Okay, and now I can exit this file, and all what I have to do now is have a look at that file, and I'm gonna just copy everything that is here until configuring MySQL. So I'm gonna copy that, and I'm gonna create a file that is called deploy-web.sh, the same name that I have given inside the Vagrant file. That's very important. And I guess I have missed the service Apache start. It has to be right at the end. Okay, and that is going to install Apache and PHP on my machine. Let's create the second script, which is deploy-db.sh, and this is going to have the rest of the lines till MySQL start. So I'm gonna paste that here, and this is going to create, configure, and start the MySQL server. Okay, now I have a directory that contains a Vagrant file, and this Vagrant file contains instructions for deploying a web server or an application server and a database server using a file that is called deploy-web.sh for provisioning the environment inside the web server, and another file that is called deploy-db.sh that is responsible for provisioning the infrastructure inside the database server, in other words, the MySQL server. So let's now issue Vagrant up and watch the output here. It's very important to watch the output here because it is going to build 2 machines at the same time. So as you can see here, it's bringing machine app up with VirtualBox provider and bringing machine DB also up with the virtual provider. So it is going to act on both machines. And okay, we have a problem. The forwarded port is already in use, and that is because the Ubuntu machine is still up and running, so I will have to hold that machine. I can just use --force because I don't need it to gracefully shut down. Now I can get back to my LAMP directory. Let's clear the screen and let's issue again Vagrant up. Okay, now it is forwarding ports. Okay, notice now that it is starting provisioning for the first machine, which is the web server. And once it has finished configuring the first machine, now it is building the second machine, which is the database. You can create as many machines as you need at the same directory with the same Vagrant file, just with the method that we have mentioned. Okay, and that is one important thing to notice, which is that it cannot forward ports more than once. It has already forwarded port 8080 to the first machine, which is the web server, so it cannot use that same thing with the second machine, which is the DB. Remember when I just told you that anything that is written here is going to be applied on both machines at the same time. So I need to have a copy of this line, or just cut it and paste it here. But before I do that, I will have to replace config with app. This means that I'm going to let the app machine have this forwarded port, and the other machine will not have that forwarded port. Okay, now let's save. Let's clear the screen. Let's issue Vagrant reload to refresh the configuration. Okay, and notice now that it has not provisioned the web server again because it's already provisioned. It is going just to start building the database machine and start provisioning it. Okay, and now we have both machines successfully built and provisioned. Let's clear the screen, and now you may wonder how you can work with both machines at the same time. Both of them now are sitting in the same LAMP directory, and both of them are up and running. So if I run Vagrant status, which is a command to show the status of the machines on the system or the current machine in the current directory, you're gonna see that I have two machines. And instead of just one, I have two machines. So if I go to Ubuntu and I run the same Vagrant status command again, you're gonna see that I only have one machine, and it is what the name default. But when I go back to here, and as you can see, I have two machines, and they are named with the name I have given to them in the Vagrant file, app and db. So if I want to make any changes, or if I want to make any interaction with any of those machines using Vagrant commands, all what I have to do is just add the name of the machine after the command. So Vagrant SSH app, for example, will allow me to SSH inside the application server or the web server. Now I can ensure that I have the Apache up and running, just to make sure, as I did before. Okay, Apache 2 is up and running. And if I go to var www.html, and again, let's create, of course it's gonna be sudo. I want to create a test file as before. Let's call it lamp.php for a change, and I'm gonna write here php echo php info function. Okay, let's save, and let's go to the browser and let's change this to be lamp, because this is a lamp stack. Okay, and we do have the same output. This means that PHP also is successfully installed on this machine. However, if I run sudo systemctl status MySQL, you're gonna see that MySQL is not found because it has not been installed on that machine. Let's exit and let's Vagrant SSH to the DB or the database server. Now if I sudo systemctl status Apache 2, you're gonna see that I do not have Apache here. This is because I am on a database server. If I change this to be MySQL, you're gonna see that okay, I have MySQL up and running. If I run MySQL -u root -p admin, which is the password I have set in the script, I'm gonna be logged inside MySQL, and this means that I do have a successful installation of a database server. Now we have learned in this lecture that we can use Vagrant to provision instant environments with post-installation steps specified either using a shell script or using a configuration management specialized tool like Puppet, Ansible, Chef, or Salt, or even a containerization application like Docker. We can also create multiple machines on the same directory using the same Vagrant file for easily managing both of the machines at the same time, for easily creating environments that need multiple machines to be working at the same time, like the LAMP stack, for example, where we have the application server on a machine and the database server on another machine. And that brings us to the end of this lecture and to the end of this section. I hope you enjoyed it. My name is Ahmed, and see you next.